think they realized what AI can do. They try to implement it. I'm not so much convinced that they will be able, because subsystems are very, very complicated in that sense, right? They are large in its core, that they can fundamentally change how they approach it. But let's not forget how large they are. They will buy. They will buy other providers on the market as they have always done. And this is how they're going to adapt to the future. So I think, do I believe that Oracle or NetSuite is not going to be there in a decade? No, they're going to be there because they've bought some other players and they're going to be still relevant for sure.
Hi, Peter. I'm very excited to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining for this conversation. Super interesting journey that you had, interesting companies experiences. I would love to deep dive and learn from your experiences and share with our community of listeners. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, maybe just like jumping right away. I'm super curious, like when I was looking at your career, there was this an interesting transition from a very traditional oil and gas industry into the crypto. So it's a big change. I'm curious, why did you make this transition? If you can share a little bit more insights, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that's a good question, right? I get the question actually fairly often because you could say when you look at my CV, I was basically deep in the corporate and consulting environment there. I think, to be honest, my career did well there. However, for me, it was a turning point. I got the offer to basically join the startups, the scale-up scene. And for me, it was like, I'm at a certain age, you need to think, do you want to continue in the corporate environment? And you could say, of course, oil and gas is potentially the most corporate thing that you can find out there. And I said like, wow, no, I'm up for something new. And I'm not done basically with exploring and learning. And so I was definitely up for the challenge. I said like, what can go wrong? And this is how I ended up in the scale-up scene, yes.
Yeah. Did you have like any crypto investments before joining Bitpanda?
Frankly speaking, no, at all. Nothing. In fact, I was still in the exploration phase of what is actually crypto, what does it mean? So at that point in time, it was still early days, you could say, to really learn what it is, the risks, the positives and everything. So I didn't even know the industry quite well when I joined Bitpanda. So yeah, I also took this type of risk as well. But to be honest, I'm a big supporter of the idea of blockchain and crypto today, and this definitely stick to me.
Fantastic. Maybe one topic would love to cover a little bit your story, how you end up in the finance, and maybe if you can share a little bit about so what's your story and what actually sort of like excited you about the finance and what brought you in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. Super transparent. I did not really plan for working in finance itself. Of course, I did a classical development in my career in that sense. So I did study economy. I went into that, so it's not that far away then. However, what you're going to explore and find out when you are in businesses, specifically also in consulting, finance is everywhere. You always need the metrics. You always need to understand what the financial underlyings or the outcomes are going to be in the end. So it's a natural thing that comes with it. And of course, by nature, if you have worked with some of the big four, big fives in the financial consulting scene, you need to learn it, right? So you definitely grow up with it and you learn it on the way. And my attitude towards new things is always, you always learn to love what you do usually. So it's not that you basically saying, I'm not interested in the industry or in the topic itself. As soon as you dive deeper into something, you basically learn to love it. And this is what happened to me with finance.
What are the one or two things that keeps you very excited to stay in this space?
That's pretty easy because I think the finance space has never been more transformative than now, because specifically, I know it's a buzzword today, but it is just a fact. With the AI, specifically also with this transformation coming from the scale-up scene, finance is not what it has been before. I mean, you might still find finance similar in certain corporates than it has been 20 years before. But when you look into the scale-up scene, when you look at the disruptions that are happening today, this specifically affects the finance functions. And I see it as a huge opportunity because you can do much, much more than you've ever been able to do. So all these tons of analysts that you need before to do research, to put your numbers together, it's not needed anymore. You can basically really focus on the outcomes. And what you always wanted, you can focus much, much more on the value creation. And this is actually really, really super fascinating. So I think the preconditions for being a successful CFO have never been better because all the data gathering and all the pre-work is much, much easier today.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I have so many questions on this topic, but maybe we'll cover it a little bit later. One topic I wanted to discuss with you now is finance function in the tech business and non-tech business. I don't have that many guests who actually experienced both. So it's great to deep dive a little bit into this. How would you sort of describe the differences? What are the main, if there are any, in the approach, in the maybe tooling? Obviously, businesses are different, so that's why probably the approach in some ways is different. But curious, sort of like to get your insights and learnings when you made that transition.
I think that's definitely one of the learnings that I had in my life. I was long enough in the corporate and consulting environment. I've seen large stock listed companies from the inside. I've talked to board members, to CFOs a lot. So in the corporate scene, so I know what their challenges are, and I know what basically the new upcoming tech companies look like. And I can tell you, yes, it's fundamentally different. Potentially not so much in its core. Of course, everybody needs accounting. Everybody needs to make sure that the recording of the financials is in order. And I mean, the financial standards have not really changed. And frankly speaking, which is okay. But I think what the CFO needs to contribute in that sense. So going beyond the classical financial remits where you say, yeah, take care about the books, take care about your financing and the cash flow. I mean, that's clear, right? But that you are basically a much stronger companion and advisor to the other board members and specifically to the CEO. You're really a partner in crime to help him on the way. You are the analytical partner. And that's, frankly speaking, I think it's different. Yeah. So the CFO in the scale up and in the tech scene can deliver much more value in that sense. There is also a new tech stack available today. How you can help. I think the analytical part itself was not so much present in corporates before. So that was potentially more in the business environment and in the business functions itself. So that definitely changed a lot.
Do you think that in the tech side of the things, you have a lot more real-time data that sort of like opening up also opportunities to like act faster on the insights?
Yeah, of course, right? I think that's exactly the point. What does a classical CFO potentially do normally? I mean, he has monthly closings, right? He looks at the books. He looks how the business is performing from a financial perspective. And it's not only the KPIs itself that he's looking at. So, of course, I think he needs to be the center of all the company's KPIs. He needs to make sure that those things feed properly into financial results. So he's the gatekeeper, the advisor to the others. He needs to make sure that the North Star metrics make sense. But also the timing, as you just mentioned, is super important. So it's not only a monthly get together of the of the C-level to look at figures and talk about it and what went wrong and what should we do in the next run. No, it's a continuous monitoring and tracking. It's a continuous advice that you give. You do continuous and real-time forecasting. You potentially always adapt your views, right? So this is from a monthly check-in or a quarterly reporting and QBR. This has changed. You do it basically on a continuous basis.
Cool, fantastic. And do you think that the structure of modern technology finance teams is very much a standard where the traditional businesses will just come at some point and they just follow that, or they will stay where they are?
It's an interesting one. I recently talked to a few startups that consult corporates in their transition. I think they realize that there's new opportunities out there with new tech stack, with new ways of working. But let's be clear. I mean, they have built up their systems and structures. They have the ACP in place. They have their NetSuite in place since decades. You're not going to change that overnight, right? So I think it's going to take some time, but it is changing. And it's changing also simply by the nature of bringing new people in that have seen that, right, before. So it will be a transition. It might take some time that also the adoption there happens to the full extent.
Changing the topic a little bit to fundraising. So when you after you joined Bitpanda, you had a big round. So you helped raising 485 million in the fresh funds. A lot of CFOs supporting the business during this important process of getting fresh capital. How do you think about step-by-step playbook, how to prepare the company and finance function for significant fundraising milestones?
Very important question, obviously. I think, but before going into rather the technical process, right? I think there is the one or the other element that needs to be taken before and have where people need to have a look at. The first one is you need to keep continuous relationship with funds and business accelerators. So basically connectors. There are also these networking people that basically can introduce you to the important decision makers. So take care that you build this network early on. So that's super important that you are in contact already, that they have the ability to follow you, how you grow your business, that they stay in contact. It's not important that you already talk about the fundraising aspect itself, right? So what you need and whatever. It's really, they need to get a feeling for it on how you do, who you are as a person, and specifically towards the founders. I think it's super important that they get to know you. And that makes it thereafter much easier, right? Because they've built an opinion, they've seen you in action, and it makes it easier. On the other side, it's the story that you tell. So it's not only about the business and the exact preparation of a fundraise and how you moderate the process, that's one thing, but also how you build your equity story. What's the longer story? Make sure that the story is a sustainable has a sustainable trajectory, that you basically know what you're aiming for and that people can follow you and see how you execute it. And you basically achieve it, of course, hopefully naturally. I mean, things can deviate. That's not the issue, but they can see that you keep and you deliver on your promises. I think that's super important, and that will go a long way already. Besides, of course, being super diligent in your fundraising exercise yourself, that means have a proper data room, make sure that your financials are in place, make sure that you have all the data, that you preempt basically all the questions that might come up. Be sure about the metrics. I mean, yeah, I think that I could talk hours potentially about it, but I think these are the most important aspects.
Yeah. So you mentioned these three things. One is getting the just nurturing the relationship. Second, storytelling, and then the third one is more like executing basically this process technically. This is obviously very collaborative process with the leadership, with the CEO, with the founder of the company as well. I'm curious, with these three things, where do you think CFO should be on the driver's seat, as opposed to just supporting other person from the leadership team, particularly CEO?
Frankly speaking, driver's seat, I think I would call it moderator. I think the CFO should be the moderator of all of three things, because specifically founder-led companies, founders are not always proven business people who have seen all these aspects before. And I think you need to be the strong advisor in saying, this is how we should tactically run it. I mean, of course, a founder needs to do the storytelling and everything. And of course, the more it comes to concrete actions, into concrete numbers, and to building the equity story and building the details of the data rooms and the decks, etc. Of course, the more it becomes a in core a CFO matter. That's clear.
What is the biggest fundraising mistake that you had and you learned from?
How do I phrase it? Pick the right advisors. You need to learn, right? And specifically for people that do their first fundraisers, work with the right people. There are companies out there who believe they can help you with fundraising. They potentially come more out of the traditional corporate advisory zone. They're not going to help you. The startup scale-up scene is different. That's different people. That's a different environment. The people know each other. Don't try it with those these environments. They do not know how to run the businesses. They do not know how to fundraise. So really try to get into the network there and meet the right people that they can give you the advice on how to run it. So I think that's really the most important one. Try to get into the right circles, and they teach you how to run it in the end.
This is super helpful, very interesting insights. Changing the topic to, I couldn't stop myself asking about the FTX collapse. Obviously, that was like a big, huge event that happened in the crypto world. So one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges that was valued over like $30 billion at the peak. In November 2022 collapse with a lot of people losing their funds as well. So obviously probably was pretty stressful moment for a lot of people in the industry. How did it feel inside Bitpanda at the time? I'm curious, sort of like what were the conversations in the hallways?
I mean, it was at the end of my Bitpanda time, but I definitely still experienced everything. So what was it? I think what you need to know in crypto, there's always intensive phases, and the FTX collapse was just one of them. So was not the unique experience, the unique happening back then. But it was just one of them, and you basically learn how to cope with such ups and downs much more than potentially other industries. So it was, of course, a shock. It was very intensive. It was 24/7 operations for everybody to look at things and make sure that everything is in order. You immediately had to react because you need to understand that crypto space is very well connected to each other, specifically when you trade, right? You also have FTX to a certain extent, potentially as a trading partner. You need to make sure that your exposure is in order. So this was definitely the first things to look at. That was not an issue for Bitpanda because the risk management was always a very important topic. So that was under control. And yeah, you basically treat it like all the other bull runs or bearish days that you have in the scene in the industry. But I mean, if you are in crypto, you're gonna learn, and if you meet some crypto people, they are strong believers in the thing itself. So nobody loses the belief in the crypto scene itself. It's just happening, and you move on.
How did this event influence the view on internal controls and risk management?
On this front, frankly speaking, not much, because I think specifically this company, Bitpanda, had it under control quite well already. We had a very elaborated internal control system. We had a very well-defined treasury and risk management setup. So that was not an issue in itself. Of course, you potentially refine it. You look at the things, you see how big actually the exposures and how far risk can go. But that was not the biggest thing to change. While I know that some players in the market, and you know that FTX was not the only one who fell apart after this, some others did not do their jobs that well in that space. And I think that was, I mean, potentially just a general comment. The crypto industry, as extremely as it scaled, right? Some players did not learn early enough to to really adopt also classically and important risk management control things, to really have proper processes and systems in place. And that, I believe, even slowed down the crypto industry in itself. If they would have adopted it much earlier, much more looking at what is the regulation that is needed to adhere to, but also what just makes sense to have under control, the industry would have grown potentially even faster.
Do you think finance playing an important role in setting up these controls, or it's just up to other functions?
No, I think it's potentially the function that plays the role. No? Since, in the trading part, you have all the funds under your control. So this is what you need to risk manage in that sense. You need to make sure that your financial controls are in place. The risk management, depends if you how much of the risk management itself is under your control. But you play a pivotal role in that. Absolutely.
Would love to talk about playbook for building a finance team. So when you joined Bitpanda, how big was the finance team?
The finance team itself was 50, 55 people at its peak. I had more people because of all the operations and trading and customer success people were also under the same umbrella. Because it's pretty much connected. But the finance team itself was around 50, 55 people.
55 people, yeah. And so when you joined, there were 55 or
no.
the team was small?
No, I had... when I joined, I had 1.5 accountants, so 1.5 FTE, so that was not so much. Basically students.
Yeah, fantastic. So you build the function.
Yeah.
So curious if you can break down the playbook, what were different phases of that growth, and how you approach building out sort of like a different parts of the finance, or what type of people you were looking for in each of these phases.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the most important part already. It's really about hiring the right people. There is hardly too early for hiring good people and to get them into place. However, what you need to focus, of course, first is creating the backbone, which is making sure that the financial records, accounting, basically tax, that these things are under control. Definitely super important that the foundation has been well defined. And then you need to build out the control part. So basically, the FP&A functions, go into planning. From there, you can expand into company metrics that you have, the analytics under control, so the business intelligence. Then you build it out, the risk, the treasury topics itself. So you go step by step from a content perspective, but it's always about a constant calibration and adjustment of people, teams, etc., to make sure that they are built for the next scale. And you do that in a very trustful relationship. You always need to be clear. Things can change, right? Because if a company grows very fast, needs might change, and doesn't necessarily mean something bad for the specific leaders at that point. But it just means change, right? And with the growing company, you will always find new opportunities anyhow.
So you mentioned people. Curious, so what was your framework in terms of finding, evaluating, what are the criteria that you were looking for? It's also a very interesting industry as well. And obviously, the finance practices are the same everywhere, but at the same time, there's novelty applying them to sort of like something quite new.
Yeah, exactly. Finance practices are always the same. Agree. Yeah. From a bigger picture. However, the attitude is not always the same with the finance people, right? Well, you need people who can cope with dynamic environments, who can basically live with uncertainty, who can live with, basically also live up to the idea of we need to strongly collaborate, we need to talk to each other. I cannot just sit in my silo. I have a challenge. It's huge. I don't know what to do. I reach out and I be constructive about it, solution oriented. So I think not everybody in the finance space has that attitude. So, and that's basically the most important one. What you need to do is really watch out for those skills. And that's what you need to look for. I think there are a lot of people out there who are great in doing FP&A work or who are great accountants who know the standards in and out. There are a lot of them, and frankly speaking, that's great. But the ones who share also those attitudes, they are rather rare.
Well, yeah, I think it's similar to any other functions as well, right? That ownership and first principle thinking, that building knowledge is incredibly important at this early stages of the company. Looking back at that experience, just like a building the function from scratch, what are the couple of things that you would do differently in retrospect?
When it comes to building the function itself, probably acting faster on other functions. I mean, I know that my core focus was definitely on building out and making sure that the accounting part, the financial, basically bookkeeping and the tax topic is under control. However, even if data accuracy and the acumen is not there in the first place, already thinking about the FP&A topic, the planning topic, and it's potentially even an advice to everybody who's building currently a startup or is in the startup phase. Do not wait for this, to have your financial metrics under control. There are easy tools for that. There is easy way of doing it. So I think cleaning it up at the later stage or trying to build systems and structures around it is just much more burdensome than doing things straight away from scratch. And that's a really important advice, I think, frankly speaking, and I've seen it a lot of times with other companies. Yeah.
So next topic, I wanted to chat about the career path of the CFOs. So there was this research recently, not research, sorry, published by the Altimar, where they looked at the backgrounds of the CFOs, and then the stats show that 40% come from accounting background, and 34% from general finance functions like banking, etc. 20% from consulting, and then even 5% from product engineering. So we'll have a little bit of that too. I think, so there's a mix. It's changing over the time, but curious. So like when you think about someone on the journey to lead the finance function, so what would you recommend? What are the skills one should learn? And so like what is the path to becoming highly effective partner to the leadership of the company on the finance side?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I might be a bit biased in that sense. Of course, you need to understand the basic skills of finance. You need to learn that in a way. However, learning not purely staying in that remit, but also going beyond it in terms of understanding other business functions, strategic components of it, basically building your business acumen and your business attitude and understanding is super important. So I think there's hardly any limit to exploring other functions, other industries, and learning from it. So I mean, as a CFO, you might be your immediate and core responsibility might be finances, but in the end, it's much more, right? You are driving the cockpit of the company. You are building the cockpit of the company. You're defining the metrics together with the CEO. You track it down. You prepare strategic decision making. So if you do all that, I mean, you're just potentially I've said it before, the analytical partner to the CEO itself. So that means just staying and potentially, I mean, if you're in audit, for example, at the moment, right, I would not recommend to stay only in audit. I think audit is a beautiful place to learn the core and understand the core things of finance, but it's potentially not the right place to understand the strategic aspects of businesses. What's the when you have to decide for fundraising, etc., etc. So get a round package of insights into general business is super important.
Imagine that I'm a controller in your team responsible for everything accounting. And so I come to you for career advice. Peter, I am just grinding month to the month to close the books. Audit season is happening right now, but I really would like to be exposed to the strategic topics and sort of like just understand a little bit more about the business. What would you advise me?
Frankly speaking, that's pretty easy to answer. I think, and that's true for all the finance functions. They need to understand how close they are actually to the business itself. They might, for example, an accountant might only record, he might think he only records, um, yeah, um, and and builds the financial statement. However, I mean, he has the beauty that he understands what actually happened there. Yeah, he's the first one, and he potentially has the deepest insights and could also draw conclusions from it. So I think, and that's true for all careers in the end, you need to build up on what you have in front of you. And specifically, finance people in all the finance functions can do so much more with what they have in front of them, basically, what their core role is at the moment. An accountant can definitely advise on how to run certain, or where the company should focus at in terms of financial metrics, where he sees that might be a risk in terms of liquidity needs or other stuff, and potential threats as well. And I think if people take those things and build a strategic narrative around it, right, and try to table that with the leadership team, they're gonna soon find out how great that can be, right, and how influential they can be also in their role.
Yeah. So basically, going just behind the numbers and understanding what they're driving and being curious.
Yeah, take what you have, right? I think you have all the levers in your hand, in fact. Yeah.
Tech stack is an important part of this as well, right? So because it's enable becoming strategic, it helps with automating a lot of manual work as well. So over your career, so you've seen different companies. How do you think the space evolves? Do you think that there's a lot more available today on technology side of the things? Curious, sort of like to hear your thoughts on the change of the tech stack.
Yeah, I mean, we elaborated it on at the beginning, right? This is a very, very exciting time at the moment. The financial tech stack is really at the pivotal moment in terms of what's available out there. There's a lot in development. I think we haven't seen the peak yet. So I think all the large financial system players like SAP, Oracle, whatever out there, I think they realize that things are changing at the moment. There is a lot of, with AI, it has never been easier to build new financial systems in that sense and build new the new financial tech stack. And that's exciting, to be honest, because what took years and tons of software consultants to build systems can be done differently today. And I think there is a really disruption happening at the moment. And what might happen is that the change in tech stack also goes much faster because it's not so complicated anymore to implement a new ERP from months. It takes only weeks today with the new systems and the new things that are on the market, and you can also change them again, right? So what you see with other functions already, that they are changing the tech stack much more often and are more adaptive in that sense. This might also happen for finance in the future. But I said it's a very exciting time, and there will be new systems that you wouldn't have considered before. So very much I'm already looking deep into that, and I'm super excited and constantly exploring what's on the market there. But I said the systems are currently in the early stages still, but I think in the next 2 or 3 years, there will be fundamental shifts in that sense, market shifts in terms of who leads the market in that sense. It's going to happen very fast.
What's your mental model in terms of what are the core elements of the stack that you're looking, for instance, in your new role right now? And in which part you're ready to go for the new players, in which part you would like to be a little bit more conservative and maybe wait a little bit? Yeah, just share your mental model with us.
Yeah, good question. I think basically I said accounting, bookkeeping. There's also new systems on the market. I think specifically for Europe, they're potentially rather in the early stages. Here in Europe, it's a bit difficult or more difficult to switch to new ones, but I think in the next 1-2 years, that's going to change. But with all the other topics like financial planning, where also even there were systems very large in scale, very complicated to implement, needed a lot of attention in their adjustment, in their customization. That changed. The treasury topic is also a super interesting one because at some point there were only very large systems, only relevant for large companies on the market, while today new systems are being built and that are easy to integrate to the basic core functions that all companies need. Basically, for example, multi-bank account management, and basically cash flow management. So the core, all companies need that, and there's much more available. I think with those systems, so I would rule out for the moment where it's a bit more difficult is the core ERP topic, but everything else, there's already quite some new systems on the market that you can elevate on.
Do you think in this core ERP vertical, existing players like Oracle, SAP will adapt and change the solution? Do you believe that?
They do it already. It's pretty obvious. I think they realized what AI can do. They try to implement it. I'm not so much convinced that they will be able, because I mean, subsystems are very complicated in that sense, right? They are large in its core, that they can fundamentally change how they approach it. But let's not forget how large they are. They will buy they will buy other providers on the market as they have always done, and this is how they're gonna adapt to the future. So I think, do I believe that Oracle or NetSuite is not going to be there in a decade? No, they're going to be there because they've bought some other players, and they're going to be still relevant for sure.
So another interesting topic is AI. You mentioned this a little bit as well, and you being excited about this topic as well. So how do you what's your current approach in your team with experimentation with AI? Where do you think AI will, where AI bringing value today and where it will bring value tomorrow?
AI already provides so much in its core that the role of the CFO changed already. As said, when you had to invest a lot in research, in preparing data, I mean, I'm just thinking about how long it took to prepare a pitch deck. I mean, or let's go beyond the pitch deck a bit. When we talk about a light due diligence, when you want to have an investment memorandum, how much work you had to put into that to create all the data, to put it into shape, etc. That changed fundamentally. So this is much easier today with the existing systems, but also even making beautiful slides and everything has become much easier in that sense. And the beauty of it is you can focus on other things, right? You can basically focus on the strategic narrative. You can focus on networking. You can focus on building the equity story. You can focus on business decisions itself. And that's the beauty of it. I think this is where we are at already. I think that's going to transform, of course, and even be easier in the future. And I think what's the next stage of it is, of course, that those things come automatically, right? So that you basically have your financial records and pitch decks, whatever, can be automatically being produced out of that. And I think so that even the intermediate steps might disappear at some point. And so all these moderation topics might even get smaller. And I think that's super exciting. So that makes that will be very interesting in the future. Which roles do you need actually in finance as well? I've also talked to some developers because they are also very much impacted by the change, right? And what they see is they do not need tons of developers anymore, right? But what they still need is the people who bring the brain to the table, who do QA of the code itself, who do build the product features and the business logic in that sense. And I think if you translate that to the finance function as well, I think those people will still be needed. And this is how tech integrates and collaborates with the people itself. So you're going to need the smart people. You need to think the strategic thinkers. What's important for us? How do we build the stories? While the preparation of the data might become much easier.
How do you encourage your team to be more native in AI? So to adopt, to learn. So many tips that you can give to other folks out there.
Yeah, sharing, it sounds very easy and straightforward, and I don't know, potentially too easy. But in fact, sharing sessions, yeah, so that we really make sessions and talk about it. So that you need to carve out time where, and it's funny, right? Because what you experience is actually that everybody has done some deep dive. Somebody has done research or knows how to do very deep analytics with a certain tool, with a new AI tool. Somebody knows how to perfectly translate certain downloads into a perfect slide deck, and just doing knowledge sharing and best practice sharing is already fantastic. Yeah, and I think if you do that within the teams, that's already a big step forward.
Mm-hmm. And how would you suggest for someone in the finance team who probably been doing things certain way for many years? Like, what would you recommend them to do to sort of like learn these new skills? How to acquire? Because sometimes just like we never been exposed to this big change before, and learning is not sort of native for a lot of people. So what are the models they should actually adapt to learn this?
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear, right? To some extent, it's also part of a mental mindset. So, and people need to have it. Of course, you can try to motivate and inspire people to explore those things. But if it never becomes part of the financial, of the mental model of the person itself, then the person is potentially wrong in the scale up scene. Yeah. But uh, but I agree to that. Not to forget, there's also an element of inspiring people to look out for new things. I mean, frankly speaking, what I do is constantly sharing my insights, right, with others. It's a big thing. I've seen that on the market. We do it this way, and share it with those people. Because I mean, frankly speaking, if you can, it should also be inspiring, right? If you have your daily routines and if you find ways of doing it differently in a better way, that should hopefully trigger some interest and some motivation. And I think it's constant knowledge sharing in that sense, also in terms of just sharing insights and also exchanging with other companies. So if you see a company around the corner, another startup, scale up, exchange with how they do things is a good way of triggering motivation and interest in the topic.
Which of the workflows in finance you would just give to AI, and which ones you would just keep with humans?
I think there's hardly anything that you could not give to AI. I think there are some natural things that you would give instantly to AI. That, as said, accounting is a classical one. Everybody knows about it. Is very much done with AI today, or can be done with AI today. But even with strategic advice, etc., you can. Why should you not take advice or look at the advice of um, at an AI generated advice? I mean, what you should not do, I think, and this is up to the person then, of course, just take it for granted and move on with it, right? You need to be able to still first see the data, understand the analytics, being able to reconcile it, because also the AI data models, when we know it, right, can be wrong. Yeah, so their conclusions, or potentially they just draw the wrong conclusions because they looked at the wrong assumptions, and they potentially did not fully reconcile how you meant your request, and misunderstood how they should compile it. So you need to be careful about it. So I think the quality control and reconciliation of things is super important. That's still gonna stay in the human area, but that's why I'm saying you can basically do the AI engines systems do everything. Why not? I mean, but I think it's still the human who needs to do the QA and the strategic thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. Just to close out our conversation, wanted to ask a few quick fire questions. Starting with what's advice would you give to your younger version of yourself for breaking into the CFO world?
To break into the CFO world, I think it's interesting, right? If you're not up to it already, do not underestimate how exciting it can be. As a CFO, you are in the center. You are right at the center of understanding all the business aspects. You're not disconnected from the business. You have to understand the business. You have to give advice to the business. You are basically interacting with all the other areas and functions, and you are very much in the strategic decision making of a company. So stay curious. Do not be so. It's a really exciting function. I think that's also what needs to be said. And as said, learn the basics. That's clear, but also be excited about functions that are just close to finance. That can definitely also add value in your future. So it doesn't need to be a pure financial career, and you do not step out of your accounting remit or whatever. I think it's actually fruitful and valuable to learn from other aspects and insights as well. And I think that makes you around CFO at some point.
What's the career decision you made you're very proud of? So others thought maybe it was like reckless at the time.
Proud of I think it's always just steps in the end, but I think going out of the comfort zone, definitely out of the corporate world where, frankly speaking, I felt very comfortable with, right? So it was not a decision against I'm fed up with it, which is true for a lot of people. So for me, it was really, I'm up for something new, and I'm up for the risk, and I'm up for the new learning curve. And this, I think, is something that I never regretted. And I'm really happy that I did that decision. Yeah.
What finance skill will matter the most in 2030?
The good one. Being able to analytically reconcile from the basics, data, and what it means into strategic thinking. And being able, of course, in the age of AI, to challenge the outcome. Because it will be harder and harder to reconcile, because it's so easy, right, to get to the conclusions and to get the outcome. But you need to be still, you need to still be able to reconcile what the triggers are, the underlyings, and it might be specifically challenging for the future generation of financial leaders, because I mean, the existing ones, they still had to do all the groundwork, right? They have to. Everybody went through deep analytics, was long years in accounting, etc. And it might change, right? You don't have to do everything yourself anymore. But having that skill to understand the basics and going up to the strategic level again and again and again is probably the most important one.
What's the one book, blog, or podcast you would recommend to your finance colleagues?
I mean, this one, obviously, right? So no, I definitely listened also very much into yours. So I'm super excited about that. And stay curious, I would say, and always listen to the advices of others. There's, as said, I mean, it's a very classical phrase, but it's true. You never stop learning. It always stays exciting this way. And just listening into the thoughts of others is super important.
Yeah, thanks for kind words about the work that we're doing as well. Yeah, so it's a little bit of advertising here for others to sign up and listen for the future episodes. Peter, thank you so much. It was an incredible conversation, deep diving into some of the experiences that you had. Hopefully it's going to be super helpful for our listeners. But I truly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for making time.